Waterloo is undoubtedly one of the most classic war films in cinematic history. To recreate the grand and sweeping battle scenes, the director employed 17,000 Soviet Red Army soldiers, with the entire film shot on location using real people and horses. This feat earned the film the reputation of being one of the great wonders of cinematic history. The film in question is the Soviet production Waterloo. The renowned Rothschild family also rose to prominence during this period, building the largest financial empire in history on the bones of tens of thousands of fallen soldiers. In April 1814, at the Palace of Fontainebleau, France, the invincible French First Empire Emperor Napoleon, after the Battle of Leipzig and a series of subsequent battles, the 6th anti-French coalition army entered Paris. Amidst this crisis, Napoleon still wanted to continue the offensive, but his marshals, led by Ney and Soult, urged him to abdicate quickly. Simultaneously, Napoleon received news that Marshal Marmont had surrendered to the Austrians. With no other choice, Napoleon signed the Treaty of Fontainebleau and formally abdicated. He was then exiled to the island of Elba. Before his departure, he tearfully bid farewell to his loyal old guard, who had fought alongside him for years.
Of my old guard, though I love you all, I cannot embrace you all.
Seeing their emperor's plight, the soldiers also shed tears of sorrow. Before setting off, Napoleon kissed the flag of France and then left with a small contingent of his old guard. After Napoleon's abdication, the Bourbon Restoration occurred, and Louis XVIII became the King of France. Many nobles took this opportunity to reclaim lands confiscated during the Revolution. The people, already discontented with Bourbon rule, were further enraged by these actions and began to long for Napoleon's return. Hearing of the people's yearning, Napoleon escaped from Elba after 10 months of exile. He returned to France with fewer than 1,000 soldiers. Aiming to reclaim his throne and glory, Louis XVIII dispatched Ney to suppress the uprising. Facing a much larger force of royal guards, Napoleon ordered the guards to lower their weapons and then walked alone towards the soldiers.
If you want to kill your emperor, here I am.
After a brief silence, the soldiers shouted, "Long live the Emperor," and rallied around Napoleon, celebrating his legendary return. Napoleon returned to Paris without bloodshed. Seeing their emperor's return, the French people regained hope for the future. They raised the tricolor flag and cheered jubilantly. Faced with such a grand welcome, Napoleon felt immense pride and joy.
I am France and France is me!
Unable to change the situation, Louis XVIII fled in haste. On March 19, 1815, Napoleon reclaimed his throne amidst the jubilation of the people. This period is also known as the 100 Days Dynasty. The news of Napoleon's re-entry to the throne shocked the whole of Europe. Out of fear of Napoleon, the monarchs immediately put aside their former grudges and formed the 7th coalition against France, consisting of Britain, Russia, Prussia and Austria. They formed an army of 700,000 men and prepared to join forces to overthrow Napoleon. Napoleon understood his situation clearly. He knew he couldn't defeat all his enemies at once. He needed to divide and conquer the coalition forces quickly and then negotiate peace from a position of strength. At that time, the Duke of Wellington's British forces and Blücher's Prussian army were stationed in Brussels, Belgium. Napoleon decided to lead his army personally to defeat them. That night, Soult reported to Napoleon that Wellington's and Blücher's armies had separated. Hearing this, Napoleon was overjoyed and decided to strike quickly while the enemy forces were divided. On June 14th, Napoleon crossed the Belgian border and reached Charleroi, separating the British and Prussian forces. He then decisively defeated Blücher's Prussian army at the Battle of Ligny. Although Napoleon won the battle, he failed to eliminate the Prussian forces entirely, and his strategic goal remained unfulfilled. He sent Grouchy with a third of his army to pursue the Prussians, a decision that further divided his forces and contributed to his eventual defeat at Waterloo. Upon learning of the Prussian defeat, Wellington retreated to Waterloo. On June 17, amidst heavy rain, the French and coalition forces arrived near the town of Waterloo. The Duke of Wellington chose the battlefield carefully, positioning his troops on the reverse slope of Mont Saint-Jean, which provided cover from French artillery. Napoleon, an expert in artillery, knew that the muddy ground from the previous day's rain would hinder his attack. He delayed the start of the battle by over 2 hours to allow the ground to dry. However, this delay proved costly, as it gave the Prussians time to reach the battlefield. Soon, the French launched a fierce artillery barrage on the British positions, and thick smoke enveloped the battlefield. A decisive battle for the fate of Europe had begun. Napoleon planned a feint attack on Wellington's right flank, aiming to capture the farmhouse of Hougoumont. If Wellington's center came to the aid of the right flank, the French could launch a decisive assault. Napoleon sent his brother Jerome to attack Hougoumont, but the Allied defense held firm, and the French could not break through. Seeing the right flank under heavy attack, Wellington did not send reinforcements from his center. Napoleon's plan failed, and the delay cost him valuable time. He had to admire his opponent's strength. Soon, the French launched an attack on the enemy's center. In those days, armies attacked in tight formations due to the low accuracy of flintlock muskets. By forming lines, the soldiers could create a wall of fire that compensated for the weapon's inaccuracy and delivered devastating firepower. The soldiers clashed fiercely on the battlefield. When the moment was right, the Scottish Grey Dragoons charged the French lines. Successfully repelling the French infantry. However, French cavalry surrounded the Grey Dragoons, and their commander was killed in the ensuing melee. As time passed, the battle situation changed. A dark mass of troops appeared on the horizon, but no one could confirm whether they were coalition or French forces. Eventually, Napoleon recognized them as Prussian troops in their black uniforms. Knowing the Prussians would soon arrive, Napoleon ordered his troops to launch a more ferocious attack, aiming to annihilate the British before the Prussians could intervene. Wellington noticed the French cavalry massing but saw that their infantry remained stationary. Suspecting the approaching troops were Prussian, he ordered his forces to retreat 100 meters and reorganize their defenses on the reverse slope of Mont Saint-Jean. Seeing the British movement, Ney believed they were retreating and enthusiastically led a cavalry charge. However, the French cavalry was met with a barrage of artillery fire and well-formed infantry squares, which they could not penetrate. Lacking infantry and artillery support, the French cavalry suffered heavy losses. The once peaceful Belgian town had become a graveyard for thousands of soldiers. At 6 p.m., the French finally captured the strategic farm of La Haye-Sainte, allowing them to bring more troops and artillery to bear. Napoleon then deployed his elite Imperial Guard, launching a final assault on the Allied lines. Seeing the Imperial Guard advance, the usually calm Wellington finally showed signs of panic. He ordered his troops to concentrate in the center, preparing for a final, decisive battle. However, news reached Napoleon that Blücher and the Prussians had arrived. Napoleon was filled with regret. Soon, a wave of Prussian troops in black uniforms surged towards the French flank. Blücher, a seasoned 70-year-old commander, had the ability to turn the tide of the battle. Napoleon had no reserves left to stop the Prussians. After a fierce battle, the demoralized French army began to crumble. Soldiers shouted that the Imperial Guard had been routed and that Napoleon had fled. The French army, overcome by a sense of defeat, fell into disarray. With the Imperial Guard's defeat, the French were doomed. Upon hearing the news, Napoleon realizes it's all over. He makes his way through the shell-shocked battlefield to the army, preferring to die with the soldiers rather than live with them. His loyal followers dragged him away from the battlefield as the coalition forces closed in. Even after the battle ended, Grouchy had still not arrived. Still remaining on the field at this time were Napoleon's old Praetorian Guard squares, unwilling to retreat and surrender, defending the last dignity of France with the conviction of certain death. And these old guards were all killed in the end. In the end, the saddest part was not losing the battle but winning the war at such a great cost.